So, why do I have a beef against Sta-Bil? Because they're big fibbers. Hey y'all, thanks for tuning back into Chickanic. I hope everybody's having a great week. It is time, depending on where you live in the world, it is time to start thinking about storing your equipment. Today we're going to go over companies that are straight up lying to you, products that do not work at all, what I recommend, and steps you need to take to make sure that your equipment starts next spring. So let me start out with saying I am not paid or sponsored by any of these products. The information I'm sharing today is purely from experience of owning a lawnmower repair shop for the last 13 years. Now, there are two different kinds of storage. There's short-term storage and long-term storage. And depending on which way you're going, they're completely different methods. And we have to be honest here, the best course of action is using ethanol-free fuel, hands down. But the truth is, half of you aren't going to buy it, and a bunch of you can't even get it. Let's go ahead and knock out short-term storage first, since wintertime is coming up and there's lots of equipment you have sitting around that you need to get stored. One of the most common questions I get asked is what I use in my mix and do I recommend Sta-Bil? And I'm not going to make you watch this whole video before I tell you what I use. I use Ethanol Shield. And you're probably going to want to hang around and watch this video to find out why I use it, because you're going to want to get some too. Now, to be honest, it doesn't matter which stabilizer you decide you're going to use. They all have antioxidants in them that are actually going to help your fuel from going stale for short-term storage. So, why do I have a beef against Sta-Bil? Because they're big fibbers. Now, for years, I've been telling people, and I've even made a video about it, that when you see a product on the shelf like this, and it's got this little paper on it, or maybe just a tag hanging off of it, I knew that they had to tell the truth about what the product does on the bottle, what is tested and proven. But what they put on these, I mean, why would they even put these on there? It's just saying the same thing that's on the bottle. Well, that's because they're allowed to fib a little bit on these. And for years, when you would buy a bottle of Sta-Bil, nowhere on it would it say it removes water. Just on this little piece of paper it did. In fact, the Sta-Bil storage I have from 2022 says nowhere on it that it removes water. But guess what they got on bottles from, I think, last year and this year? This is, and you tell the date by these first numbers that are etched on there. This is 24, so we know that this is a 2024 bottle and this is a 2024 bottle. It says now removes water. And the 360 protection says removes water. But do they? Why is water remover so important? And how do they do it? Well, to actually remove the water from a fuel tank or a carburetor, the chemical has to combine with the water. Draw it up from the bottom of the tank or the carburetor bowl, whatever it's in, become one so it can go through the carburetor, through the chamber, into the cylinder, burned up, and be gone. That's the only way it can be done. So do these combine with water? Let's see. We're going to use the Marine 360 and the regular 360. And I'm going to add about 4 or 5 drops to each one. Hold them up to the light. Ooh, look at that pretty. Oh, it's like a lava lamp. Shake them up really good. Let's see what they do. So yeah, it took literally 1 minute for it to already separate that much. And that's not even diluted with gasoline. I mean, they're saying 1 ounce for every 5 gallons of gas. That's like 128 ounces a gallon times 5, 640 ounces to 1 ounce of this fuel stabilizer. It doesn't even get rid of any water like this. Then there's Ethanol Shield. Now, this is what sold me on Ethanol Shield, straight up. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of water. Fill it up with some Ethanol Shield. And my stuff's old too. Like this little small bottle, I have a gallon of it over there that I use all the time. So this isn't even fresh. Immediately it ate the water. I don't even have to shake it. I'm going to. Anyways, just to show you what it does. But I do want you to see this. The water is gone immediately. Shake, 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 shake. Let me let it sit. So yeah, I can let it sit here all day. It has become one with the Ethanol Shield. Now, we still got a problem with our experiment though. It's not true to life. It has no gasoline in it. It's not diluted at all. So should we try that? So let's mix it up. Now, Ethanol Shield on the bottle usually says that this 4-ounce bottle will do 20 gallons of gasoline for 2 and 4 cycle and 40 gallons for auto and marine. Now, I always use a little bit more than you're supposed to, but still, if we're going to be doing it correctly here, 1 ounce for every 5 gallons of gas. Now, that's for when you're running it to clean everything with the antioxidants and yada, yada, just like this stuff right here. That's fine, but we're wanting to store. And it doesn't say this on the bottle, but it does when you go to the website, that if you're using it for storage, to mix 1 ounce for every gallon of fuel. So I have a pint jar and there are 8 pints in a gallon. So I need 1/8 of an ounce of Ethanol Shield to add to my gasoline to do this experiment. 1 pint, 1/8 of an ounce. Now, before I add water to this to see what it does, I want to show you something that you might find really interesting. Gasoline, everybody always asks, how does water get into my gasoline? It sucks it out of the air. As gasoline evaporates, it will condense the air around it to form little droplets of water that just pour right into it. So now that I got it mixed correctly, let's throw some in a little cup, add some water to it, and see if it eats it. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up to 30 milliliters. And you have to remember at the same time, I'm only going to put like a drop in there, because you think about your gas tank is maybe a gallon, and you're not going to get it full of water just from it sitting there. It's just going to get droplets. So we're just going to fill this up. I mean, if we filled it up halfway full of water, that'd be like having a tank halfway full of water. So you're not going to get that out without actually draining it. There's no product on earth, not even heat, that can get out half a tank of water. Okay, so we have it filled up to 30 milliliters now. I got my water. Let's see what it's going to do. All right. 1 drop? 2 drops? Should I go 2 drops? 2 drops. I'm going 2 drops. All right. I can see it bouncing around the bottom there. What's it gonna do? Let me show it to y'all. There's our little water droplet. I'm gonna give it a little stir action here. And what's it doing there? Turning white. Break it up a little bit, stir. That was actually the chemicals combining with the water to make it combine with the gasoline. So giving it just a second here. Let's see. Well, it's still there a little bit. Stir like it's in a tank being bounced around. Let's see. Just getting less of it. Stir it a little more. And as you can see, there's still a tiny little bit, but it's like slower and it doesn't move as fast. Like it's getting definitely connected to the Ethanol Shield. I mean, if you look at it this way, it doesn't look like there's any water in it at all. So I'm gonna Still stir a little bit. Let it sit for a second, see if it builds up. All right, check it again. And guys, there is barely anything. It's getting less and less every time I do it. But it is definitely not a bubble of water in this little cup anymore. So it's taken about 3 minutes, maybe, of a little bit of, agitation. Now, the one problem of me doing it where it's so humid is, as you can see, those little droplets going into it, it's constantly getting more water in it as I'm sitting out here in my humid shop. All right, guys, we are 5 minutes into the initial droplets of water. And I better hold it with my right hand because I already spilt a little bit of it. And there is virtually no water left. It eats it. See? It does something. So yeah, it works. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's all snake oil. Well, proof is in the pudding. And a little bit of something's better than nothing. Okay, now Terrell did a phenomenal video. He took like 19 months. He had a bunch of engines. He put a bunch of different fuel stabilizers in there to see which ones would keep the fuel freshest the longest. And well, guess what, guys? Ethanol Shield, after a year and a half, started up like a champ. So yeah, that's why I use it. And that's why I recommend it. That's why I keep it below in the description box of all my videos. And if you'd like to get your own, click the link below. And also, like I said, I got a little bit of a heavy pour when I use this. The reason I do is because when we would have 2,000 pieces of equipment come through the shop every year, I had tons of customers that would not come pick their stuff up for sometimes 6 months to a year after I repaired it. And I didn't want to repair it again, and they didn't want to pay for a repair twice. So I put it in everything I worked on. That way I knew even if a customer was going to pick their equipment up and let it sit around the house for maybe 6 months until they go to start it up, it was going to start. Not only does it stabilize your fuel and eat water, but it also has oils in it to help rejuvenate all your rubber components, your fuel lines, grommets, the diaphragms in your carburetors. It's a win-win. Now, they do sell this stuff called Chickanic in the bottle. Don't believe it. It doesn't work. That's your warning. So yeah, that pretty much covers short-term storage. You definitely use Ethanol Shield, and air is your enemy. If you can fill your tank up, that is best, because the more air that gets to your tank has a vent. Your carburetor has a vent. All these areas are getting air to them. The more air it gets, the more condensation you're going to get, the more water you're going to get, and eventually the Ethanol Shield can't tackle it all. Now, many units have a fuel shutoff on it, so you can keep this gas stored in your tank and then run out whatever's in your carburetor. If you can get to your bowl nut and remove all the fuel out of your bowl, that's the best thing to do. If you don't have a fuel shutoff, I leave those in the description box below. They're super simple to put on. Everybody should have these on everything. Because one thing Terrell's video did find is it doesn't matter what fuel stabilizer you use, that if it sits long enough, it's going to have the detergents gum up into a gel in the bottom of the bowl. And the only way to fix that is to open it up and clean it out. Now we're talking long-term storage for your two-strokes. Now, if you have something that you use like once a year, like maybe a mini tiller or a pole saw that you might only use every few years, this is the way to go. Get yourself a 2-gallon mix of two-stroke oil. Empty your fuel tank out of your machine, and I want you to pour this entire bottle into your fuel tank. I want you to prime it into your carburetor, make sure it gets through all of your fuel line assembly, back into your tank. It's saturating your fuel filter. It's covering all the inside of your fuel tank, and let it sit. When you decide a few years later that you want to run it, all you're going to have to do is pour that oil into your fresh fuel that you just got. Make sure that it's 2 gallons or a little less. Prime it out of your carburetor. You might want to put some of that fuel back into your gas tank, prime it, pour it back into your storage tank. That way you know you flushed your line good. Now it might smoke whenever you start it up. Your plug might get fouled out in the beginning. I learned this trick from a lot of my older customers who had chainsaws sitting around for like 20 years that they completely filled every crevice with oil. I thought there was no way they were going to run. Pour the oil out, I clean out the fuel system, and lo and behold, they always started. It was crazy. When it comes to long-term storage for your 4-strokes, that's a completely different ballgame. The gas isn't going to be good. If you're going to leave it over a year and a half or so, you got to get rid of that gas. I would definitely still use some kind of fuel stabilizer to run it dry with. You know, get it into your gas, run it through your carburetor, make sure some of these extra oils that are in this, you know, gets in all the crevices, and then have a fuel shut off in your fuel line that you can turn off, let it run dry. Now, all of it's not going to get out of your bowl, so you might still want to take your bowl nut off and release that little bit of fuel. Once you run it dry, just remove the fuel line, go into your carburetor, and drain this into something else. All right, guys, that's it. That is your yearly reminder that you need to think about storing your equipment right now. And when you think about it, think about Ethanol Shield. If you want to get some of your own, I will leave a link to it in the description box below. If you want to see a video about long-term storage, check out this video right here.